Hi, I'm Eddie Ice. I'm the Executive Director of West Virginia Public Broadcasting. I'm talking with Eric Douglas, our Director of Broadcast Journalism here. And Eric has just finished writing a radio play about the last train to Glen Alum. What made you want to do this?
You know, I've always been fascinated in storytelling. We all had to study our history books in school, and for some of us that wasn't all that exciting. So you need to know the backstory. You need to understand what's going on. So I just wanted to tell a West Virginia story, but and add a little entertainment to it at the same time.
Yeah, and that is what we do here at West Virginia Public Broadcasting. We tell West Virginia's story. But the thing that I liked about this when you brought this idea to me was radio dramas, you really don't hear them anymore. And I thought this would be a great thing for us to start exploring again.
The family would get together and sit around the tube-type radio, dial it in and listen to their favorite shows for about 3 or 4 hours, and then the programming went off. But that was the thing. That was TV back in the day. And for me, the fun thing about doing this story was when you listen to it, you hear it or you see it in your own mind. It's kind of like reading a book, or an audiobook these days. But yeah, you see what's going on, and your version of what the characters look like is probably different from mine, but we both get the same story out of it, and that's kind of fun.
Yeah, it is kind of fun, and we did talk about it, and I think we did have different perspectives about what they might look at. But why did you pick this particular historical event?
I reached out to a good friend of mine, Stan Bumgardner, who actually you'll hear from later tonight, and I said, Stan, give me some. I want a West Virginia story that nobody really knows about, but that's actually something we probably should know about. And he gave me 3 or 4 on the list, and I kind of looked a couple of them up, and I landed on this one. The main character in the story is a newspaper reporter, but I found actually he's a real character.
Right.
And I found his description of this whole event. And, me being who I am here at West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I thought, well, if we're going to have anybody as the star of the show, it's got to be a journalist. It's got to be a newspaper reporter.
Right. And one of the things that I liked about it, of course, it looks at the coal industry that we have here in West Virginia, but it also was a reminder to me, because I've kind of forgotten this through my history, about the different immigration groups that came here to do the coal mining.
In this case, we're talking a lot about the Italian immigrants. But this was a huge place, especially southern coalfields, McDowell County, Mingo, Logan. You had huge populations of Eastern Europeans. You had Russians coming here. You had the Scots and the Irish too, but you had all these different groups. A lot of African Americans worked on the railroads.
Right.
And migrated up into West Virginia and then stayed here to mine coal.
Right. And the other thing I loved about it was like, the entire staff of West Virginia Public Broadcasting got involved with this.
There's a whole bunch of voices, and actually what's cool is several of the people who are voice actors in this audio drama are not normally the people you hear on radio. A lot of these are behind the scenes kind of people, but we got them in the studio, and they did some great acting. I really need to give a shout out to Landon Mitchell too. He's one of our video producers, but he stepped in to produce this show. Had never worked on a radio broadcast before, like most of us had never done a radio drama, but he did a great job pulling it all together, finding sound effects, finding music that supports it.
What do you think about how the audience is going to react to this? And if we get a great reaction, what do you think about doing this again?
I really think our listeners are going to really enjoy this and appreciate it. It's a fun story, but it's also, you learn a few things, and it kind of makes you go, I had forgotten about that.
Right.
Or I just thought about that. I know we definitely want to hear back from our listeners. Tell us what they thought about it. I think it'd be fun to keep doing these.
Yeah, it's kind of where you're experimenting, doing things a little different here at West Virginia Public Broadcasting. Again, this is what we were asked to do, to tell West Virginia's story.
One of the great things about this is we're entertaining, but we're also educating and informing too. And I really do. I think that's the basis of what we do here.
Absolutely. Everything we do educates the public in one way or another.
So now, if you're ready, let's listen to The Last Train to Glen Alum.
West Virginia Public Broadcasting presents The Last Train to Glen Alum, an original radio drama written by Eric Douglas and produced by Landon Mitchell.
110 years ago, the people of southern West Virginia saw a robbery like something they had only read about in the cheap pulp magazines from the Old West. The story involves a gang from out of town, murder, a chase, and a sheriff with a large posse on the hunt for the gangsters. Even once it was all over, questions remained about who the men with the guns and a propensity for violence were, and who put them up to it in the first place. Orland Booten was a reporter for the local Williamson Republican newspaper. On slow news days, he liked to get out in the county and see what was going on. And there was always something going on in the coal camps. Friday was payday. On this particular Friday, 3 men picked up the payroll from the train that had just arrived from Lynchburg and jumped onto a flat car to go up to the mine. Same routine every week, $7,000. Just about the exact time of day, too. It all began on Friday, August 14th, and was done by Sunday, the 16th.
Hey, Orland, how's it going?
Hotter than blue blazes, Joey. Anything good coming over the telegraph?
Nah, it's been pretty quiet today so far. The number 15 from Lynchburg with the Glen Alum payroll should be here any minute, though.
You grew up around here, didn't you, Joey?
Yes, sir, Mr. Booten. I got kin all over the place. Spent my whole life here, chasing rabbits and deer up and down these mountains, fishing in the creeks.
You're a pretty experienced mountain man, then, are you?
I don't know about all that. My pa says I'm still wet behind the ears, and I don't know a thing. But he's the one who taught me what I do know, so it must be him that's the mountain man you're looking for.
Joey, you have a front row seat to what's happening in town. Have you heard about any unusual things with the Italian miners, like that Black Hand group?
Nah, sir, but I'm not Italian, so them boys don't talk to me all that much, even when they do speak English. They stick to themselves and their own part of the town. I hear that talk mostly among the town folks.
I'm sure you're right about that, Joey. Ever hear of anyone getting one of them letters with the drawing of the hand on it?
Nothing around here. Just what I read in your newspaper. Do you think they're coming here?
Oh, I don't know, Joey. Just a reporter speculating about what's happening in town. So tell me how you learned to do the telegraph.
Mr. Davis saw I could follow the taps pretty well. I did pretty well in school. When it went, that is. So Mr. Davis, he taught me everything he could, and then he got the Western Union people to send me to Charleston and train me up. I can go anywhere in the world now and run a telegraph.
Is that what you want to do? Travel the world?
No, I don't know nothing about that. I just seen the pictures in them books. My whole world's right here, Mr. Booten. I enjoy reading your newspaper, though. There's the payroll train coming in.
Thanks, Joey. I see Doc Amick out there. I'm gonna go see what he's up to. Nice talking to you.
You too, Mr. Booten.
Hey, Doc. What's going on?
Oh, hey, Orland. What are you doing up here?
Just getting out of the office to see what's going on outside of Williamson. I've got to report the news.
Sounds like an excuse to get out of town and away from your desk.
There may be some truth to that, too. Doesn't explain what you're doing here.
Much the same as you. I got to see a couple patients at the mine, so I'm tagging along with Mr. Johnson, the bookkeeper, and Joe Sheeler. They're running the payroll in, and I got a free and easy ride. Feels good to get out of the clinic from time to time. A couple of men got hurt, so it makes sense to grab them up there before they go home. But Johnson is the one they're looking for. He hands out the pay.
Hey, Doc, we're ready to go.
Coming, Joe. See you around, Orland.
Boy, it sure is amazing what they're doing with these gas motors these days. Replacing steam engines and making these small scooters. Before you go, Doc, I'm hearing rumors about some of those Black Hand fellers coming around. We've heard stories from up north. You hearing anything in the clinic? You treat the miners and their families, right?
I've heard some rumors in town, too. Let's meet up tonight, and I'll tell you what I know. They're mostly Italian miners working around here, so it wouldn't surprise me.
Well, Prohibition's only been in place here in West Virginia a couple weeks, Doc. I think I can still run us down some whiskey, if you're up for it.
People around here have been making their own whiskey to skip paying taxes long before anyone even thought about Prohibition.
I don't see that going away anytime soon, but I think that would hit the spot.
Them blue bloods up in Charleston don't quite understand how things are done here in the coal fields.
You got that right.
The three men rode the small gas-powered cart up the Norfolk and Western Spur line to the entrance to the coal mine. It was about 6 miles. Typically, steam engines brought the coal out of the mine and back down the mountain to Glen Alum and then to Williamson 30 miles away. But to get where they were going quickly, the gas carts were quicker and easier.
You got any plans this weekend, Mr. Johnson?
Just me and the missus, Doc. We're working on our house so it can be ready when the baby arrives.
I didn't realize your wife was expected.
She ain't, but we're going to work on that some this weekend, too. How about you, Joe?
There's a dance in Williamson and I got a date.
Good for you, Joe.
Hey, Joe, slow down a bit.
What?
I said slow down a bit. Thought I saw something up ahead of us in that last turn. There it is. Looks like 2 or 3 trees down across the tracks. The track is blocked.
That's odd, Doc. Steam engine came through here just a couple hours ago with a full load of coal. How did all of that fall so quick?
Boys, this is raising the hair on the back of my neck some. Joe, hand me that shotgun, will you?
You don't think something's going on here, do you?
Maybe just some kids or dumb luck, but let's check it out and see what we see. Makes me nervous with all this money on the cart. Someone cut these trees down. Look at the cross marks on it. That one was drug over here.
We're about halfway in. What do you want to do?
I don't see the 3 of us moving these trees on our own. Let's get back to Glen Alum and get some help.
Problem is, the cart doesn't back up. It only goes forward. We can either turn it around on the tracks, or we can walk our way back down the mountain. Did you hear all of that racket? I'm getting the creeps up here.
As their shift ends, men come out of the dark coal mine and expect 2 things: a ride back to town on an open-air train car, and their pay at the end of the week.
Hey, boss man, where's our pay? We worked hard all week. The men need their money.
You not try to stiff us, are you?
Keep your shirt on, Rudy. And don't you get all riled up, Luigi. Do you think I'm dumb enough to do something like that and not even have a ride for myself off the mountain? I just came from the telegraph office. The payroll car left on time.
Why not here then? It always here by the time the whistle blow before the big train arrives.
Seems like you're paying awful close attention to the payroll car, but you're right. The telegraph office said they left on time, but nothing since. They should have been here 30 minutes ago.
Gasoline engine broke down on them maybe. I don't trust those things.
We need go look for them. They go off track, maybe.
Good idea, men. Take the handcart over there down the mountain. Take it slow and watch off to the sides in case they went over the side somewhere.
What about the transport train? Did they leave on time too? It should have found them from below if they broke down.
Yeah, they said the transport car was pulling out just as we was going back and forth.
The 2 miners moved a handcart onto the tracks and began the search for the payroll cart. They would only make it a couple of miles.
What's up ahead?
Trees down.
Can you see past it? Maybe they crash.
I think I can pick out their cart, but nothing else. Let's see. It looks like the cart just stopped. Wait! Mio Dio!
They all dead, but they're not crashed.
No, Luigi. They all shut up. Those are bullet holes.
That's awful. Who would do this?
There's a bigger problem. Lockbox is gone too. Someone stole a payroll.
As the miners made their grisly discovery, the transport train reached the scene from the other side of the downed trees. The engineer was immediately suspicious of Rudy and Luigi.
What happened here? Did you boys do this?
No, sir. We just arrived. We miners come to see where the payroll is. You can put your gun away.
Stand away. That's Doc Amick, Mr. Sheeler, and Mr. Johnson.
We just finished our shift. We don't have guns. The foreman tell you. We just came down the handcart to find them.
Okay. Well, that'll do for now, but you bet I'll check with the foreman.
Rudy, come and look.
What is it, Luigi?
That brush knocked down on the hill and those tree stumps. It's all fresh. That's where the men with guns sit. And those rocks down the hill, that's where they are knocked loose. That's the direction they went after carrying the lockbox.
The telegraph machine in the N&W rail office sprung to life. Even the pace of the signals revealed the urgency of the message as it arrived in Williamson. A runner delivered a hastily written message to Sheriff Greenway Hatfield, the nephew of none other than Devil Anse himself.
Hey, Sheriff. Telegraph man says you got to read this.
Give me that. Boy, grab every deputy you see outside, tell them to round up everyone. We got a heinous murder, and killers are on the loose. We're forming a posse.
It took less than 45 minutes for the sheriff and his posse to load onto a special train, heading back up the mountain. They passed through the Glen Alum station and headed up the spur line, stopping right where the 3 men were killed.
Now, boys, I know it's late in the day, but we've got to get on the track of these bandits. They killed 3 good men of our community, including Doc Amick. He's delivered our babies and helped our sick. We owe it to him and his family to catch whoever done this. Rush, I'm putting you in charge of this hunt. Tell them what you want to do.
Sheriff, I appreciate you trusting me. A couple of you wrap those men up good and tight, and I want you to go back off the mountain with the bodies. Take them to the Undertaker. They deserve that bit of respect. The rest of you spread out and start tracking, but stay close and stay in contact. These woods are thick, and it'll be easy to lose sight of each other. I'll take 2 or 3 of you and head that way. A couple more of you stay with Colonel Gajot, and a few more of you follow along with Red Bill.
Sounds good, Rush. I'll take the rest of the boys and head along the creek and see if the murderers are heading that way.
Sheriff, who do you think would do something like this?
I don't know the answer to that, Rush. It's got to be locals or a gang working with locals. How else would they have known to hit the payroll car or even what time?
Makes sense to me. I just can't imagine anybody from around here killing the doc and those other men like that, though. It's pretty cold-blooded, if you ask me.
Could have been bootleggers. They decided to make some easy money since they outlawed liquor around here last month, and it got out of hand. Since then, those boys have been getting jumpy.
Saturday morning, the day after the killing, dawned foggy as the humidity met the cooler air from the top of the mountain. It made everything feel damp. Sanford Hatfield, one of the sheriff's cousins, and a few other men who lived along Ben Creek were out hunting for turkey. They were carrying their rifles casually as they listened for the telltale sounds of the territorial birds. The men spoke softly as not to alert their quarry.
Ed, I think I hear something coming up through the bushes up ahead.
Sounds too big to be a turkey, though, Sanford. And the turkey's gone quiet.
The 4 men in the hunting party stood quiet. Just the sound of their own breaths.
You fellers stay here. I'm going to go look up ahead a bit. Y'all come up here. Somebody's come up through here. Look at how they slid down that creek bank into the water.
You're right, Sanford. I count 4 or 5 sets of tracks. Looks like they was in a hurry.
Any guess on how long it's been?
Yeah, must have been a few minutes ago. Water in the creek's still muddied up. Do you know of anyone hunting out here? This is still your land, ain't it?
It is, and nobody asked permission to hunt up this way.
The bandits opened fire on the local men without provocation. Both Sanford Hatfield and Ed Mounts are injured by the gunfire, but both men survived. None of the others were hit. One of the uninjured men ran to tell the sheriff, while the rest helped Hatfield and Mounts back up the trail to get help. Once the word made it back to town about Sanford Hatfield and Ed Mounts getting shot, the posse knew right where to search. Runners were able to get messages to the different groups and send them to a clearing near the creek bottom that was backed up against a steep hillside. At least 50 men joined the posse at this point.
Men, spread out. They've got to be in this area, but be careful. We know they'll shoot without warning.
Where do you think they's hiding, Sheriff?
Well, they made the mistake coming this way. There's really only one way in and one way out. I remember hunting and camping out here as a kid. There's a cave over there, and if they knew about it, or if they stumbled upon it, that's where I bet they are.
You think they's locals, like those boys that jumped your Uncle Devil Ance's brothers up in Boomer, Elias and Troy? That was about bootlegging, right?
That was, but I'm not getting the feeling this had anything to do with that. This was a straight-up robbery, and they didn't care who got in the way. It makes me wonder, too. It just seems like a setup. That's what makes me think they ain't local. Seems to me they had a plan for the robbery, but no plan on what to do after. I mean, they wasted a bunch of time getting out in those thick woods, and they could have followed a ridgeline into the next creek over from the mountain and been out here before we even had a chance to catch them. But they've been wandering around the woods, making a lot of noise and shooting at people.
Why do you think they're doing it then?
I don't know if someone's testing us or seeing if they can get away with something like this. They probably didn't think we'd respond so quick over mine payroll money.
Just then, as the men crept through the woods toward the cave, several shots rang out, and the men of the posse ran for cover behind trees and fallen logs. Some of them returned fire, shooting blindly into the woods.
Hold your fire! Hold your fire! Don't waste your ammo until you have something to shoot. Get me Tony Gojo and Red Bill Dameron. We've got to make a plan.
Sheriff, here comes Tony and Red Bill.
Sheriff, you called for us?
Thank you for coming out here, boys. Looks like we got them pinned down, but there's no good line of sight.
Yeah, we can't see them, but they can't see us neither.
It'll be dark soon. What do you want to do?
None of these men are ready for a gunfight in the middle of the night. We set up perimeter and keep the bandits pinned down in there until morning.
Makes sense to me, Tony. Then what? You was a colonel in the army, right? What do you think we should do?
In the morning, my thinking is I take 4 or 5 men and try to flank them from the left over there. When we're ready to move, you guys lay down some covering fire from this side.
What do you think, Red Bill?
I don't have Tony's army training, but I reckon I can organize some of them boys that have some sense in their head. Haven't wasted all them ammunition shooting at shadows to get them bandits distracted.
We'll hunker down for the night and get everyone fed. We'll move on these bandits in the morning.
Sunday morning at the telegraph office in Williamson, Orland Booton was beside himself. It was his job to let the community know what was going on. It was sunrise, and he and Joey Sipple had been in the telegraph office all night. A through train had pulled in about 20 minutes before and was about to leave the station. Booton made up his mind.
I just can't do it, Joey. I need to be up there and see it for myself. There's a battle raging. Well, that's the last we heard from him, right? No other messages coming off the mountain?
No, sir. None at all. I would warrant that the most of the men up there are too busy to even think about riding to the telegraph office to send a message back.
You're right, of course. Well, that's it. I've got to get up where the action is. Hand me my hat, Joey.
Yes, sir, Mr. Booton, but I'm coming with you. Someone's got to watch your back.
But, Joey, you're a young man. You got too much to lose. You can take your skills all over the world. And who's going to watch the telegraph office?
It's okay, sir. My shift changes on in just a few minutes, and I have everything we need right here. I got some food in the pantry and water canteens. Got my Winchester, too.
In about 30 minutes, Orland Booton and Joey Sipple boarded the number 4 eastbound through train. They left the train in the community of War Eagle, and Joey guided them through a shortcut to Cold Spring Fork. That's where the gun battle was still going on since the night before. Arriving at the clearing where the bandits were pinned down, Booten and Sipple were struck by the park-like appearance of the area. It would have been a nice place to come if it weren't for the gunfire. They both feared they would never visit this clearing without thinking back to this day. They climbed to an area to the right of the scene on a small rise, where they could see what was happening.
Looks like Colonel Gougeot was trying to come at them from the side.
You're right, Joey. Can you see the bandits?
I think they're over there. Looks like some movement behind that big fallen tree. I wonder why the sheriff didn't send anyone up here as a lookout.
Good question, Joey. I'll try to make my way over to the sheriff and tell him.
No, sir. I can move faster than you. You stay here and I'll go.
Before they could argue any more about who would go, dozens of shots rang out, and the sheriff yelled for his men.
Charge them, boys. We've got them pinned down.
Some of the men in the posse understood the command, but others clearly didn't.
What's going on, Mr. Booten? Men are running all over the place.
I think they must have thought the sheriff yelled for a retreat or something.
Looks like half the posse's running away. Look at 'em head up the creek.
Sheriff Hatfield was dismayed watching half of the men run the wrong way, but he started shouting at those who stayed behind. Red Bill and Colonel Gougeot joined in. They stuck to their plan. The colonel took his men around to the left, and Red Bill moved forward in the front to make a lot of noise and distraction. He even threw a hand grenade in the general direction of the gang. Bill never admitted where that came from.
Keep going, men. We've got them pinned down. Open fire. We've got them.
Charge in there, men.
Don't shoot the colonel and his men. Concentrate your fire on that tree.
In just another minute, it was over. The gunfire just stopped on its own. The colonel was the first to reach the bandits.
It's done, Sheriff. They're all shot up.
Let's move in, boys, but be ready in case it's a trap.
Over here, Sheriff. They're down behind this tree.
Look like they're all dead. All of them.
Yeah, they're all shut up. Wish we would have gotten one of them alive. I really wanted to find out if they were on their own or someone else put them up to this.
Sheriff, do you mind if I take a look?
What's a newspaper man doing all the way out here?
It's where the action is, Sheriff. I gotta be where things are going on so I can report on it, don't I?
Well, come on in and look then. It's pretty grisly, though. Don't complain to me if you can't sleep at night.
Joey, get in here too. Sheriff, Joey here is a real mountain man. He stood up there with his rifle and didn't budge when half your men did. I'm sure he's seen worse, even if he is young.
Thanks, Mr. Booten. None of these fellas look familiar. They don't even look like they've been around here to even start dressing like the local Italians.
You know all the new miners, do you, Joey?
Sheriff, working in town at the telegraph office, you'd be surprised how many people I see come through town. These fellas are darker skinned than most of the workers around here, like they come from a whole different part of Italy or something. They're shorter, too. They would stand out and be noticed if they were brought in for work by the coal company.
He's right, though. These boys are wearing the same clothes they had on when they got off the ship from Italy. Which raises a question for me. If they're new to town and haven't even gotten work clothes from the company store yet, who put them up to this?
What do you mean, Mr. Booten?
Joey, if they haven't gone to work on the mines, they wouldn't have any way of knowing when the payroll train comes in, how to stop it before it gets to the mine, or any of that. Where did they get the guns they had? Someone was behind all this. It wasn't just these boys acting on their own.
Well, I'll try and run down who these fellers are, but it's going to be tough to find out who's pulling the strings.
The final death toll stood at 11. Dr. Amick, Johnson, and Sheeler, who were ambushed as they took the payroll to the mine. The 5 bandits, and William Burwell, Squire Belcher, and Landon Tiller were all members of the posse. The 5 bandits were laid out in town, but no one ever claimed the bodies or said they had even seen the men before. All the money was there, except for $20. Unfounded rumors circulated they were members of the Black Hand, a secret society of Italians that preyed on their fellow countrymen. In the months that followed, efforts were made to identify the bandits. Coal company officials did not want other incidents of the kind. An investigation conducted by a well-known detective agency was fruitless. At least that was how it was reported. Few records of the Glen Alum payroll robbery exist, but in 1959, the late O.H. Booton, retired Daily News staff writer, wrote to Charlotte Sanders from Macon, Georgia, recalling the August 1914 incident he covered in person. Booton spent 42 years as a newsman in Mingo County.
Thank you for listening to WVPB's production of The Last Train to Glen Alum, written by Eric Douglas and produced by Landon Mitchell. The Last Train to Glen Alum stars Deborah Fernsell as the narrator, Joe Stevens as Joey Sipple, Jim Wolfe as O.H. Booton, Jim Lang as Doc Amick and Rudy, Lance Schrader as Joe Sheeler, Landon Mitchell as the engineer and the runner, Ethan Raymond as E.D. Johnson and Ed Mounts, Joseph Zetrovich as Luigi and Greenway Hatfield, Brad Kender as Foreman Bill, Zach Harold as Rush Slater, Bill Lynch as Sanford Hatfield, Stan Bumgardner as Tony Gojo, and Danny Boyd as Red Bill Dameron.
Special thanks to technical consultant Stan Bumgardner, West Virginia Public Broadcasting Director of Video Production Chris Barnhart, and West Virginia Public Broadcasting Executive Director Eddie Isom. Before the break, we listened to The Last Train to Glen Alum radio drama. The story was set 110 years ago in the coal fields of Mingo County. News director Eric Douglas, who wrote the play, sat down with historian Stan Bumgardner to discuss the event and what was going on in West Virginia at the time.
Let's talk about the atmosphere in West Virginia in 1914 or so.
1914 is kind of, in some ways, a pivotal year in West Virginia. You know, it's a year after what was, you know, there's no way to quantify this, but like certainly one of the deadliest coal mine strikes or strikes period in U.S. history at Paint Creek and Cabin Creek in Kanawha County. And at the time of the Glen Alum robbery, you had Prohibition had just come into effect in West Virginia. Which happened nearly 6 years before it happened nationally. But what was happening in southern West Virginia was just massive change. And I mean, everything was changing. That, you know, before the Civil War and even after the Civil War, you know, this had been a sparsely populated area. You know, just some scattered farmland and really not much of that because of just the terrain and, some people raised livestock. But if you look at the census numbers, there's just very few people who lived in Mingo County and certain parts, McDowell County. Very few people lived there until the railroads came.
Right.
And the railroads started coming in the 1880s, and then by the 1890s, the Norfolk and Western had reached what's now Mingo County. And at that time, it was part of Logan County. Mingo County is our newest county. It came in 1895, and it's almost solely due to the arrival of the N&W, the Norfolk and Western, and the opening of coal mines. Towns were being built seemingly overnight. They were all over the place in that part of the state, and places where almost nobody had lived.
You know, I've always wondered, actually, I knew Mingo split off from Logan, but I always wondered why. And so it was just growing so fast that somebody decided, no, we need a separate local government.
the area that's now Mingo County, was kind of an isolated part of Logan County before the N&W arrived. However, when the N&W arrived, there was such an influx of people, and you were supposed to be able to get to the old rule was that you were supposed to be able to get to the county seat and back in a day. And that's how they determined the county borders. And that's why today it seems ridiculous sometimes that we have, counties with county seats that you can drive to, they're 20 minutes apart.
Right.
But back then, you might need a whole day or more. And so, yeah, just the influx of population into Mingo County was incredible at that time period. And the other thing is that you had competing railroads, competing coal companies, and the Norfolk and Western was a little different from other railroads that came through, is that they were, they had watched what had happened with the Chesapeake and Ohio, which came in the 1870s. And when that railroad came through southern West Virginia, you had a lot of what I'd call freelance co-operators who just came in and took advantage of the fact that there was this railroad now that they could get the coal to market. And that's what was holding back the coal industry, mainly in southern West Virginia, is just how do you get it out of there? So when the Chesapeake and Ohio, the C&O, came through, there were examples of miners who just became rich, who figured out how to run their own operations. There were co-operators who moved into the region. By the time the N&W came around, the organizers of the N&W realized, well, we're missing out on half of the money. The railroads are making a lot of the money, but there's a lot of money to be made in mining the coal. So the N&W, with a decade of knowledge about what had happened with the C&O, the N&W's leaders went in and bought massive amounts of coal land adjoining the railroads and adjoining the branches of the railroads. So the N&W, Mingo County was very much an N&W county. And so there was that part too, is that if you can essentially, if you're in control of the economy and you can control the government, then you've got the whole shebang.
Why was Prohibition like you mentioned that a moment ago, that 6 years before national Prohibition, West Virginia decided to go dry itself. How did that happen?
Men were getting paid, and they get paid on Friday, and by Saturday the money was all gone on alcohol, and there were problems associated with alcohol and towns that catered to that. You had some now legendary drinking and red light districts and things in southern West Virginia that were being called to attention, and there was a man named Freda Blue who even wrote a book about talking about the sin in McDowell County, and essentially they had just got enough votes by 1914, but this was a movement that was sweeping the country. There were many states that were going dry before it happened nationally, and it should be noted that there was a kind of a racist component to some in the temperance movement, because they associated, and they did this very publicly, they associated drinking and the problems with drinking with particularly with immigrants. And so that became a target. It was kind of an anti-immigrant movement as well as an anti-drinking movement.
I've often wondered, this massive influx of immigrant populations coming into work in the mines and on the railroads. Was there a lot of pushback amongst the native born, or did they remember that they were just most of them just 1 or 2 generations removed themselves and didn't worry about it a whole lot?
There was it was an interesting situation. There was a very anti-immigrant philosophy that was happening, all across the country. That the immigrants were coming in, and at that point, particularly from Eastern Europe, and that they were taking jobs away from native-born West Virginians and native-born Americans. But there weren't enough laborers to fill the jobs. I mean, West Virginia's economy was really booming, and that's something that sounds, it sounds like something we can't relate to because of what West Virginia's economic situation has been for so long. But people were pouring into West Virginia to fill jobs, and they couldn't fill the jobs fast enough, whether it was in coal mines or factories, wherever. And so there was a need for all of this labor. But and this gets into some of the labor and trying to stop the labor movement from developing, is that coal operators would, one of them, Justice Collins, even referred to it as a judicious mixture, which was, we want the right balance of native-born whites and blacks and immigrants to help balance off each other. And it was successful at times. I mean, they fomented this resentment toward these other groups so they wouldn't pull together and unionize.
So the Black Hand, let's talk about that for a second. So as my understanding, a lot of that was up in the northern part of the state, in the Italian community, but up in the northern part of the state. But kind of give me the short version of what the Black Hand was.
The Black Hand was, and it's often associated, I mean, it's, sometimes it's even used interchangeably with the mafia, but it's not, it's a variation of all of that. The Black Hand, they were principally into extortion. And it was extortion by Italian immigrants and Italian Americans against Italian immigrants, that they would threaten, they would blackmail. There were kidnappings, there were threatenings of kidnappings, of murder, and unless you paid up money, unless you paid a percentage of your business, that, if you were an Italian storekeeper, you were a target. If you were an Italian, any Italian professional who made money was a target of the Black Hand.
If you were the subject of this, you would get a letter. I don't know if it was in the mail or it was just stuck under your door, and there would be a drawing of a black hand on it, or a couple different other symbols. But and that's kind of the root of it, is where it got its name, was just that they included these drawings to denote, we're coming for you.
It wasn't just a one-time deal usually. It was that once that you paid up to them, you kept paying to them.
Sure.
It was a regular racket. So you had to pay a percentage of what you brought in. And it was a very scary time for Italian immigrants. And that's a key point, is that it was such a small percentage of people, of Italians, who were doing this to other Italian immigrants, that they were taking advantage of these people, and who had limited, knowledge of the laws, of the language, of anything else. And, many people felt like, well, the law enforcement's not going to protect us. Our neighbors aren't going to protect us. So we have to either pay up or defend ourselves.
Now we've set the stage for everything that was going on or not everything, but we've set the stage for the audio drama, The Last Train to Glen Alum. Let's talk about what happened.
Well, it started, and again, it goes back to money. That's the the money was pouring in, and you hear different numbers throughout southern West Virginia, but there was tens of thousands of dollars pouring into towns through railroad depots every day, just to meet payroll, and there was money pouring out too. And in the case of this, it was August 14th, 1914, and so the NW train was coming into Glen Alum in Mingo County, and is carrying its $7,000 cash payroll, and just like in old movies, it's like they knew the robbers knew exactly when the train was going to arrive. It always arrived at the same time. They knew exactly how much money was going to be on because the payroll was the same. So it was very easy to plan when things are that scheduled and that regular. It makes it a lot easier to plan a robbery, especially when there's not a strong law enforcement present.
Yeah, he didn't have a half a dozen deputies standing around. He had just deputize whoever was close by and knew how to use a gun and send them out into the field.
Yeah, it was, and I don't want to make it sound like a pleasant thing, because there was a lot of corruption. But in a sense, it was kind of like on the Andy Griffith Show on Mayberry, where there's one sheriff and a deputy, and they can handle minor problems that occur, but three guys get murdered and $7,000 gets stolen. A handful of law enforcement people aren't going to track these people down, knowing that they're premeditated murderers and robbers. I mean, this wasn't a crime of passion, that these people had planned this and killed in cold blood, and they certainly would be willing to do it again. So he started with, they think between 25 and 50 men, but nobody knows exactly. But the mines shut down, businesses shut down, and men joined the posse. And it eventually built up to hundreds, but still they were looking in one of the most rural, rugged areas of West Virginia. And so it was easy to hide. Eventually, if you look long enough, you're gonna catch them, because they didn't. The criminals didn't really have a great escape plan.
Sure.
That's been my take on it forever. Is that they planned the robbery, they planned everything about it, but they didn't really figure out, okay, how are we getting out of here efficiently? And maybe they thought that word wouldn't spread. Maybe they thought they had a few days before anyone would find out, but it clearly wasn't thought out very well.
Orland Booten was actually he's a real character in history. He was it was a reporter for what was then the Williamson Republican newspaper. Went on to I think the Daily News, Williamson Daily News after that, or what maybe it became the Williamson Daily News, and was a reporter in that region for 40-something years. Have you heard of him? Do you know of him directly?
I had not until this radio drama.
I think it's just kind of fascinating that this was an actual reporter on the ground.
And that was a very new thing. I mean, they didn't have newspapers in Mingo County because there weren't many people in Mingo County until around the turn of the century. So that's impressive that they formed newspapers. And newspapers were, just say something, positive here, is that newspapers and reporters, although they didn't always get the stories perfectly correct in their articles, they played an important role. They played a very significant role in throughout the 20th century in West Virginia, and that's something I almost have to remind myself today, is because I grew up in that period where newspapers played a major role, and they still do, but the numbers are shrinking, right. and who covers these things, and we had more newspapers back then, probably easily, than we do now.
Sure.
And so reporters played a big role in getting the word out about a lot of things.
When the posse ultimately killed the robbers, they were Italian or appeared to be Italian, but nobody knew who they were. They laid them out in town like you see in the Old West stories, but nobody ever came to claim them. What does that say to you?
Especially with immigrants in the early 20th century in West Virginia, the way immigration worked is often people came, the head of the family would come over first and establish himself and then send for their families. And sometimes they never sent for their families. Sometimes, bad things would happen to them, like, as we discussed with the Black Hand. So when you have so many new people pouring into an area, it's hard to document who's there. Mm-hmm. Mingo County's population doubled between 1900 and 1910. And there's certainly a 1910 census that shows us who was there. But then, by 1920, it increased, more than 50% again. And so there are people who are in and out of West Virginia between the censuses that nobody knew, and that they probably didn't have family, maybe didn't have family in this country. So when crimes like this happened or people were killed, and you see this with minors a lot, with immigrant minors, is many of them were unidentified, or there was nobody to claim the body. Didn't have a large nuclear family like native-born West Virginians, and that worked also. If you're a criminal, that worked to your benefit, because if nobody knows you, then they can't identify you. Right after Prohibition was enacted in West Virginia, about the same time, almost the exact same time, is you have an influx of criminals who are just essentially jumping from state to state, who are taking advantage of Prohibition by selling bootleg liquor. And if something happens to them, they don't have family, they don't know anybody around. For all their families know, they've just disappeared or they've run off with somebody, and people were unidentified. And that's and you see that. Another place you see that was with like the Hawks Nest Tunnel disaster. Not because they're criminals, but you had hundreds and hundreds. Some have estimated up nearly 1,000 people over the years died building the Hawks Nest Tunnel. So many of them were anonymous because they had migrated to West Virginia, either from other countries or blacks in the South. And, if they just disappeared, didn't return home, didn't send word home, the thinking was, well, maybe they just ran off.
Right.
There was no thinking that, they went and got killed and their identities were lost to history.
That was Stan Bumgardner speaking with Eric Douglas about the setting for the audio drama, The Last Train to Glen Alum. The drama itself and this entire discussion are available on our website at wvpublic.org. You can hear a longer version of that interview immediately following the play. The audio drama and this discussion are a production of West Virginia Public Broadcasting, which is solely responsible for its content.